Good afternoon, everyone. After my outburst this morning at the start of the meeting, I'll give a little latitude for people to settle in. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting for Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Before we begin, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the Cowichan Valley Regional District is within the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Paucachin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations. And I know we're also thankful to live, work, and play here. With that, we will get underway. Mr. Robbins, before we move to the approval of the agenda, are there any changes or additions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were 4 additions with respect to grants and aid that were distributed to members of the board. And you have moved a staff report from this morning's committee to this meeting, which you can include, I suspect, under
SR4?
SR4, and that was a report from the Office of the Chair and CAO with regards to a conference attendance. And with that, a motion to adopt that agenda.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
Under adoption of minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 12th, 2023 be adopted.
And if there are no errors or omissions, if I get a motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Director Toporowski, seconded by Director Deck. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
We're not aware of any business arising from those minutes, which moves you to the public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the board considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any item or items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that may or have been the subject of a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum. We have no one online, but you may have somebody here.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. If you'd like to speak for public input, just step to the podium and press the blue button to make sure the mic is on, and then you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is David A. Church. I live at 4598 Sparwood Road, Cowichan Bay. At a previous EASC meeting on May 17th, Chloe Boyle presented the 4 variances for our property subdivision, our proposed subdivision of our property. After that meeting, the motion to approve the variances was referred to the Cowichan Bay Advisory Planning Commission. On June 22nd, they gave their immediate unanimous approval. Our motion returned to the EASC meeting last week on July 19th. Unfortunately, 4 neighbors voiced negative concerns, but they did not concentrate on the variances, and they influenced the people who were voting. Quote from the EASC meeting July 19th last week, Director Abbott stated, "I feel the applicant's proposal is not in the community's best interest. Accordingly, I move that developmental variance permit be denied." What is the community's best interest? The Cowichan Bay Advisory Planning Commission has as their mandate to look at the community concerns, and they voted to accept the variances. Apologies. As the landowner, I have repeatedly brought to your attention that the negative neighbors are not concerned about the variances. The only mention of the setback variance was to ridicule our poor planning and accused us of trying sleight of hand to change road frontage. The social component is only one of 4 measures of the public interest dynamic. Public interest is to balance the social, economic, safety, and environmental concerns. The outcry from disgruntled neighbors has brought misguided social concerns to the forefront. The economic gratification to the community is to have 2 more beautiful homes built on the proposed subdivision. The high value of these homes would increase the tax base and update the neighborhood. The safety concerns are a moot point as the access roads to the 2 properties on Sparwood Road are already in place. The environmental concerns have been addressed by geotechnical and environmental engineers. The The tranquility and easily damaged ravine on the east side of our property has forced me to site our present house and any future homes close to Sparwood Road, away from the ravine. I think the community's best interest is to approve the variances and stop denying the betterment of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any others who wish to give input for public input? Just state your name and please go ahead. Welcome.
Okay. My name is Marion A. Church, and I live at 4598 Sparwood. We have been granted Lambourne water and sewer hookups 3 years ago. Our request for variances does not relate to the water and sewer. The density of homes in our neighborhood is not an issue. Our proposed subdivision is less dense than that which is allowed. Within 100 meters of our property, I count 31 homes. 19 of those homes have less than a half an acre. 12 homes have a half an acre or more. And our proposed lot size is the allowed 0.2 hectare or half an acre. Our variances only concern the property line setbacks. The existing residence and garage constructed on the property were placed away from the ravine and were legally constructed entirely in compliance with the zoning bylaw setback requirement. The geotechnical report states that granting this development variance permit would allow the two existing buildings and future residential construction to remain on the property in a safe setback area away from the steep ravine and the watercourse. These do not need to have any rationale for subdivision. The regulations allow for subdivision regardless of reasons why the property owners want to subdivide. Now, the staff at CVRD have thoroughly vetted our property and recommend that the board issue a development variance permit. The planners state that the change of front property line does not negatively impact the community, nor pose any hazard, risk, or negative environmental impacts. The Cowichan Bay APC unanimously approved the motion to accept the variances on June 22nd. We've considered various ways to alter the subdivision request to eliminate the need for a variance. I submitted a map using a lengthy panhandle to continue to use Lanes Road as the front of all three properties. But all the ideas still require a form of variance approval. So I urge you to uphold the APC approval. I urge you to not accept the denial of the development variance permit and allow the variance motion to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have time for public input. Please go ahead.
I'm going to apologize first. My name is David Connor, but I'm going to apologize. I've lost my hearing aids, and I'm unfortunate I can't hear, but I certainly speak. And today I felt compelled to come and speak on behalf of my neighbors who live just a stone's throw away from me. A little while ago, one of my neighbors, a few of my neighbors, I saw them all get together, and they were asking me if I would sign a petition. And they had a petition saying that they were going to obstruct David and Marion's proposal because we had shitty water at Lambourne Estates. And we still have crappy water there. But there seems to be all kinds of people that use these sessions to grind their own axe. And what I was going to say is I hope that these people that signed this petition to do so, that their comments have no bearing on the outcome of your guys' decision. And I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't matter if we have 10 or more new places come into existence, that in itself is not going to change the water quality. There's nothing that David's application is going to do to change our water quality for the better or for worse. So anyhow, I felt compelled to come for that. But I was just going to say as well, there are places only a stone's throw away. often, our houses and our land is our biggest investment we have. So when we come at our old age and we come to deal with the aspects of government, if sometimes these things cannot be taken lightly. And in fact, a lot of people don't. And what's interesting, just recently, in January of last year, January 22nd, the Supreme Court said in their cases that a lot of municipalities are no longer immune from liability. And the liability issues don't cover you from making decisions that are irrational and or in bad faith. And just stating that this is our policy and allowing you to make your decision by saying this policy is not enough to keep a municipality from liability. That's the law has changed, and it's making a big difference out there too. So these things we can't take into just being light. So I guess that's all I wanted is thank you for your time. I'm sorry, I would like to answer any questions if you guys had some, but unfortunately can't do it at this time. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have to go back to work. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Any more speakers for public input? You just take the lectern and the microphone is on and state your name and then you got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Kevin Marr. I live 3 properties over from the applicant's property. First thing I'd like to say is, with the exception of my neighbor, there's not a single neighbor adjoining this property or within the 100-meter advisory area that supports this application. That I'm aware of anyway. But I'd like to speak to a little background here. A few years ago, Cowichan Bay developed what was supposedly an award-winning OCP that contained some zoning bylaws, some well-thought-out zoning bylaws. And those zoning bylaws are there so that existing residents can be assured that any development will proceed in a sort of pre-planned, orderly manner. And it's actually acknowledged that variances should be used as a last resort. This is not something you just Band-Aid on. And the history of this property is that the applicants bought the property to build their, I assume, dream home, but also with the intention of subdividing. And they've stated that. And they deliberately set the front parcel line very, very far away from their house and their driveway so they could build the house they wanted, which was sort of the largest footprint possible with the best view, and I would do the same. But they could have planned this differently and we wouldn't be here today. They could have built an equal-size house of 2 stories with a smaller footprint. They could have built a house without a garage attached to the side of it. They could have done a whole bunch of things and we wouldn't be here today. I sat on the Cowichan Bay APC for almost 15 years. I heard all kinds of variance applications. I never heard of a developer requesting a variance because they didn't plan their own development very well. I never heard of that, and that's essentially what's being asked here. They want to change the lot line so that the front parcel line disappears. Essentially, they will have no front parcel line setback because they're moving it. It's kind of musical or parcel frontages. And I mentioned this earlier in another meeting. This is something you want to be concerned about. And I used the word precedent, and the planning department said, well, it's not a precedent. You're right, legally it's not a precedent, but good planning would make consistent, predictable decisions. Yes, it's not legally binding, but there's other developers that are watching this, and if you do this, you're going to be seeing these sort of applications again. And while it's not a precedent, and you could ignore that, then the planning becomes sort of capricious and unpredictable, which is something you don't want. It says that everything should be exhausted. Well, it wasn't just not only all other options exhausted, the applicant created... Sorry.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Got it.
Thank you. Any other public input before we resume our agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Robbins, we'll move on with our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing under delegations. I don't think that there's any report from you, sir.
Okay, nope.
There is one piece of correspondence for the board's information. It's with regards to the provincial government's engagement on proposed amendments to the cannabis control regulation.
Thank you. Any discussion from the directors? Smoking lounges could be coming to somewhere near you that would allow it under bylaw? Probably North Cowichan. Seeing no discussion, we'll move on, Mr. Robbins.
Moving then to committee reports. The first one is CR1, report and recommendations of the Committee of the Whole meeting of July 12th. For Director Morrison, there's a recommendation before the board.
Director Morrison.
I'll move the recommendation that was printed in the agenda, and I'm just looking to see if there's a follow-up that,
There was from this
from
morning.
this morning, but did it make it to this agenda? Yes, it did. So maybe I'll move CR4 after CR1.
Okay, we'll do CR1 first, and then we'll vary I'll take the chair's prerogative to vary the agenda, but moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion on CR1? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll jump to CR4 because that's still Director Morrison, and it's directly related to the resolution we just passed.
And I don't know if it needs to be read since it just came from this morning.
I
but
would read it, yeah, just because.
I'd move that. Or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, if
Sure.
you may.
Okay, recommendation R6 from this morning that, one, that a Cowichan Lake Community Hall Advisory Committee be established. Two, that the membership of the Cowichan Lake Community Hall Advisory Committee consist of 2 appointed resident community members for each of the following jurisdictions. A, electoral area F, Cowichan Lake, South Scots Falls. B, electoral area I, Yubo, Mead Creek. And C, the town of Lake Cowichan. Move that item.
And seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
CR2 is the report and recommendation of the Cowichan Community Center Commission meeting of July 13, 2023. There is a recommendation coming from that commission.
Okay, do we have the chair here of this Cowichan Recreation? No? Is that you?
Chair, I'm the vice chair.
Do you want to read the recommendation?
If you'd like me to read the recommendation, yeah, the report and recommendation from the Cowichan Community Center Commission on July 13th, 2023 reads that the 2023 budget for Function 426, the Cowichan Performing Arts Center, be amended by increasing sponsorship revenue by $21,981, and that the increasing the supplies equipment purchases by $21,981.
Thanks. Moved by Director Istash, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
CR3 is the report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of July 19, 2023, chaired by Director Wilson. There is a 9-point recommendation coming from that committee.
Director Wilson, 1 through 5 are for all directors. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking through this. Is there any there that any directors would like pulled? Director Nicholson, number 4. Can you pull number 4, please?
Thank you.
Any more?
Seeing none.
Seeing none. Okay, call the question on numbers 1 through 5, with the
Less
exception of 4.
So that's been moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Director Wilson, could you read number 4 so that can be discussed?
Absolutely. Number 4 is that the strategy for allocating the growing community funds to be the established 2024 budget process.
That's correct.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Keep going.
That's
So
it,
that
actually,
makes us-
and so I'll open up the floor, I suppose, for discussion on this. Director Nicholson.
Director Nicholson.
I'm going to take this as an opportunity to talk about our strategic planning process. And I think that I'm a little bit concerned that we're we haven't spent enough time actually discussing, now that we have a draft strategic plan, discussing the options for implementing it over the next 3 years. And I think the strategy of leaving it to the budget process is not a very strategic option for doing that. I think that we would be much better served if we had a workshop before the budget process, before we started discussing what staff bring forward in the budget process, to think about the strategic priorities we've identified and to really try and come to some consensus on what we would like to truly think we can try and get done in the next 3 years. I find in the past 2 terms that I've been a part of, where I guess we do a budget process every year, but a strategic plan once a term. In the past couple of terms, my experience has been that we have this general sense of important things that we'd like to see done, and then we dive into the specifics of the budget process. And the budget process means we look at each service function, and we go through this long list, and it's hard to actually step back and think about what the whole package is. And we are a very rigid organization as a result of the way we have to budget. And there is very little latitude to shift courses. We have a lot of services that we need to deliver, so we're locked in. By and large, our budget is locked in with providing the services that we have. So there's not much latitude to shift course, so you can just do it a little bit. But the reason I'm actually talking about it here in this Growing Community Funds is that at least the Growing Community Funds is a new funding pot for the electoral areas that we could actually use to help make a shift because it's new money. So I'm just taking that as an example of something that I think needs to be discussed in a broader context before we dive into each of the budget line items, because once we dive in, it doesn't, from my perspective, it is not strategic, and it doesn't allow you to make much cohesive movement. So I would like to make a motion at some point about having a workshop in the fall to discuss implementation options for our strategic plan priorities, but I don't know when that's appropriate.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Miles Wilson, because I think actually the timing might work if we get to the conclusion of the strategic planning process workshop, then budget.
So, thank you, Director, through the chair, in response to Director Nicholson's comments. So the budget calendar has been set, but recognizing what Director Nicholson is saying, I'm looking at our CFO, acting CFO, because we would need to alter the budget calendar in order to accommodate this, but one option to propose is, and I know we technically don't schedule meetings in August, but it's for consideration, is that we could try to do something towards the end of August.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Nicholson, yeah, like as Danielle said, the calendar's already set. If we want to change it, then that we push everything. So instead of having a February date for adoption, everything will have to be pushed and rejigged, and we would have a end of March adoption date for the budget.
If I may, are we so far down the budget rabbit hole in September that we can't fit in a workshop to look at going into another budget without a completed strategic plan is very problematic to me. So in the process of completing the strategic plan, can we not tack on discussion around this pool of money and still maintain the budget calendar? Like they can't happen concurrently?
Through the chair to Chair Stone, we could do that. It's fitting it into everybody's budget, because people will already be working through all of their budgets and meeting the mandate and trying to figure all of that out. And then if in September, they have to have everything to me before September 22nd, so I can start reviewing everything. If there's any changes that need to be done, it would be nice for them to know ahead of time before they start going through that thing of doing all the budgets and then have to throw in a project that has been decided from the board that now they have to rejig something else to fit that project back into their budget.
Thank you. I've got Director Istash and then Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to share quick, this exact scenario has just come up at North Cowichan, that staff felt it prudent to have that type of quick meeting first based on our strategic priorities on how we should prioritize funding that can fit within the budget process, so that at the budget process time, we aren't trying to determine priorities. So I just wanted to show that it was relevant timing to what Director Nicholson brought up, is that we actually are just implementing the staff report on that at North Cowichan for the same process.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Director Acton. So, and Director Staples and Director McClinton, but I've got Director Wilson, then Acton, then McClinton, then Staples.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm glad that Director Nicholson has brought this up, because it does bear thinking about here. This is, as we said, a pot of money that we have been given a portion of in our own areas without really knowing what the staff intends to do. So I think I'm in total agreement with Director Nicholson that we need to talk about this further. So I would definitely support this idea. And I'm sorry that it does put an extra burden on the staff, but I think that's something that somehow we would have to deal with.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Miles Wilson. I know I won't be here in late August, so you guys have fun. Ms. Miles Wilson.
Thank you. So through the chair, we hear what you're saying, and it currently, as mentioned, this document is draft. It's still in progress. We still have a couple of steps to go before it's finalized. But one thing I was just talking about with Ms. Bowen on the side here is what we can do is share the draft as is with all the budget managers. We know that it's fairly well developed. There's little tweaks that will be made to it, no doubt, as we go through the final iterations. But proposal is that we just kind of distribute that, get staff to kind of take a look, dig into it, and try to get a session set up with the board early in September. But we really will need to make sure that it's in a final draft form for the first meeting if this is going to work its way into this process effectively. So we can do this work at the staff level over August. We will need to make sure we adopt this early in September.
Thank you. I've got Directors Acton, McClinton, and Staples.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a long discussion on this, and Director Nicholson brings up a good point, but I trust staff. They've heard us. They've been a part of the strategic planning session so far, and there's certain items that are urgent and new ones that are up and coming. So I think that they've heard, staff has heard our concerns, and I think we can all work together in September to kind of keep the strategic planning in the back of our mind and as we move through the budget. But I don't think we need to have extra pressure on staff, especially the finance team at this time.
Thank you. Director McClinton. You're looking good there, but you're muted. It looked like you were giving us a good one.
Yeah, I am. I'm up on my soapbox. Yeah, I concur with Director Acton. I listened intently at the ESA committee and listened again. Unless I get like some sort of concrete example of why we need a workshop. I mean, we have a laundry list of infrastructure projects, community projects that need funding. I mean, the staff is well aware of what those projects are, going to bring them to us, and we can work through that list together. I'm just really struggling to understand the purpose of a special workshop to go through this.
Thank you. Director Staples.
Thanks. I struggle with this because I've been on this board for 5 years now, and every time we go into budget, we are always having a discussion about how we don't have a strategic plan to properly follow to make sure that we're in alignment with all the work that we're doing. And this is the closest that we've come so far to have that. And I don't want, in this to get lost. And I appreciate the the possibility of having a draft first so that we can sort of, staff having that so they can review it. But it would be really good, even if we did it as the committee of the whole, not necessarily a workshop, to kind of just go over it prior to those final decisions of staff so that we make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. And so there's not a lot of extra work being added on later. So my input at this time is that we try to make that, have an extra hour or 2 hours dedicated to a committee of the whole meeting to have that discussion, so that, we can make sure that things are moving in the right direction and we're all feeling comfortable about that.
Okay, thank you. I picked up most of it. I noticed this morning, Director Staples, too, your audio is really poor. I don't know if maybe your mic's not working or something and it's on your device mic, but it was really hard to understand you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me better?
Oh, yeah, now you're totally clear. I did get what you were saying, though.
Okay.
You're in favor of some kind of extended committee of the whole. I don't know if you were here this morning. We've kicked half committee of the whole to board, but we could always have a dinner day.
So let's extend our day. I mean, I'm just saying, rather than having a workshop, let's specifically do this just for this, but give everyone, make sure everyone has a draft and has had a chance to go over everything and is really prepared so that we can just, discuss the things we don't feel are in alignment. So that's my suggestion. And I have new headphones, so now I know I have to take one of them out. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Miles Wilson.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reflect on that comment from Director Staples, and that would be definitely something that we can do is prepare for the first committee of the whole in September to bring the strategic plan to that meeting.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Morrison next.
Thank you. I'm just needing a little clarification because some of the discussion doesn't seem to track with what some of the debate was at committee. So I know we're on 4, but we're talking about, it seems like there was reference to division of funds and to each area and that sort of thing. And I think that was the top-up money that we were talking about.
That was gas tax,
Gas
yes.
tax top-up money. And I might need some clarification from staff because my understanding was the Growing Communities funds, had we got definitive direction on what was eligible? Because I think that's the one that we're not getting allocated to individual electoral areas.
That's true.
It's got to be more of a group.
Global.
And so I don't think we were anywhere near ready for any decision-making around corporate strategic plan. So can I have some help on, because.
And for clarity, too, we already passed number 5 that says staff prepare a report to the first electoral area services committee in early September connecting growing community funds to strategic priorities. So that's already being done to EASC as well. Okay, so finish your.
Well, no, exactly, and I think staff made it very clear that there's been so much front-load work done on budget that the part of the reason why we sort of endorsed the number 3 on the gas tax funds formula that was put forward is because of the requirements around infrastructure deficit and those sorts of things. So I think this is, it would be a nice to have, but I just think there's been too much effort, too much work put into place to start trying to link that, the new initiatives in our corporate strategic plan to these dollars that they're trying to implement within the 2024 budget process.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go to staff for a moment. Did you have anything you needed to add, Ms. Mullen? You look like you're ready to jump, but or you're running out of the room. Because I watched the meeting and I do have challenge tracking some of the conversations there at times, but we've passed a resolution already at this board meeting that staff prepare a report for the EAS committee in early September, connecting growing community funds to electoral area strategic priorities. Yet here we are with number 4 pulled, that the strategy for allocating growing community funds be established, or be the established 2024 budget process. And now we're talking about additional sessions under number 4, but we've already endorsed a strategic priorities session around the growing communities funds. So, Director Nicholson.
I apologize for the confusion. The reason that I wanted to, I'm just using for and 5 or whatever, to make a point that I do not think that we've had adequate discussion and reached consensus on our strategic priorities as a board to implement them successfully through the budget process. So I think we need to have, perhaps as alternate director Estes pointed out, North Cowichan is doing, I think it would be helpful just to make sure we're all on the same page and understand the financial limitations that we have, and then the opportunities. And this Growing Communities Fund is just an opportunity. I mean, I'm not even specifically referring to that at this point. My point is really that I do not think the board has finished what it needs to do as far as strategic discussions go, if we are going to implement a plan successfully over the next 3 years.
Thank you. I do have Director Staples. I just, before I go to round 2, I'm supportive of some kind of a group discussion, but when it comes to growing communities funds, actually, I would say I don't think number 5 is even appropriate, although we've endorsed it as a board, because the growing communities funds are a whole region funding source, I believe, that should look at both electoral area priorities and regional priorities. But if that's a committee of the whole discussion or an all-member discussion, otherwise the EASC committee by our resolution here is already set up to have that discussion, or we can discuss lots of discussions, how we bring the whole group together to have that strategic view of that $5.5-ish million worth of funding. Director Martman.
I think I see 2 issues with this. The one is the strategy and whether directs it appropriately through the budget process. And my experience is that it would be fraught with problems with that, because the way we've historically done budgets, we are, as others said, we drill down, and you don't get the high level sometimes until at the end. And so I'd like to see the high level at the beginning. How that's established, whether it's through a workshop or community as a whole, I'm comfortable either way. I think it's a discussion that be held in advance of the budget process. The second piece is that when I listened to the meeting, my apologies for not being there, is I'm not even sure we know the amount. And I think that plays into it largely as well.
Yeah, we do. Ms. Bowen, I don't want to get it wrong, but it's 6 million, I thought? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't clear at listening to the meeting, that's all.
Oh, I thought it was in the staff report. Yeah.
It was in a staff report, but when it was asked, the question was it may be different.
I think you may be confusing some gas tax top-up discussion.
No.
Through the chair to Director Martman, I think you're referring to, Director Morrison was just asking about the calculation, if it was correct and if we had validated it. And we didn't. We trust, the province is the one that calculates it and gives us the money. We don't calculate it and tell them what to give us.
But we know the amount because it was
transferred
given to us into our account.
And we got a letter from the province
Yeah.
stating the amount that was going to be given to us and how they calculated that.
But we didn't validate the formula to arrive at that number.
Thank you for that clarification. So, but to go back to, I think, Director Nicholson's point, is that to make good decisions around priorities, from my perspective, you don't do it once the horse has left the barn. You have the horse in the barn and then talk about when you're going to release them. Sorry, a farmer.
Okay, unless Ms. Miles Wilson, I was going to go to Director Staples. She was next on my list. Director Staples. No, you're good?
No, I just forgot to take my hand down.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to point out through the chair, so the EASC meeting is scheduled for September 6th, and then we have committee of the whole and board September 13th. So we'd be planning to come back with the Growing Communities Fund report to September 6th. We can also bring the strategic plan, more of a final draft, to the same meeting and have this discussion there. And then following week on September 13th, bring it to committee and talk about the strategic plan there again. So you've got a couple of opportunities, and we've got August, staff have August, not you guys, to get some of this work done and get it to a more final version. So I just wanted to point those dates out. It's not too far in the future, and we can just work towards that over the next month and get it ready.
Thank you. I'm going to look to a motion or something to move this meeting along. I get that people want to, I think that seems to have interest in this has made their views known, so I'll look for a motion, or if somebody wants to move number 4, or if wants to abandon it, but just by the good grace of something to help governance. You're moving number 4. Thank you. And seconded by Director Abbott. Further discussion or amendments? I'm open to anything here right now. Director Nicholson.
Well, maybe we could at least say following a board discussion in September.
Okay, following a committee of the whole discussion and electoral area service discussion in September.
I would move that amendment, but I would like the staff to clarify for you, perhaps. We were told that the Growing Communities Fund 5.6 million was for electoral area.
I think you might be right, because as soon as I said it, I was like, wait, the Muni's got money already. So what does it even need to go to committee of the whole then for? Oh, the strategic priority stuff, okay. Well, accepting that amendment, that pending the discussions at both EAS and committee of the whole in early September, do we have a seconder for that amendment? Director Wilson, we're gonna, hopefully if there's no discussion on the amendment, we'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor?
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry, Director Acton. On the amendment.
That was my question. It's on the amendment. And, okay,
Go ahead.
never mind. I'll zip it.
Any discussion on the
I'm voting
amendment?
against it.
Sorry, I think maybe there's a connectivity problem, Director Acton, because it seems like there's delay. You were doing the robot on the screen, that's all. Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? Director McClinton, Acton. Do I have any other opposed? Director McClinton, Acton opposed. The motion carries. Now on the motion as amended, which would be number 4 with the addition of those 2 strategic priorities / growing community funds reviews early in September. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Should we take a break? I'm kidding. I need a break. Mr. Robbins.
The
We're
next part
back out.
of the recommendations from EASC of July 19 for electoral area directors only voting, 6 through 9 in your agenda.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been advised that the director for the area would like to pull number 6 for discussion, please.
Thank you. So you'll move 7 through 9?
Yes.
Actually,
Sorry?
I wanted to pull item 7 as well.
6 and
Okay.
7. 6 and 7.
Okay, do you want to move 8 and 9?
8 and 9, I move those 2.
Do we have a seconder? Director Segal? For electoral area directors only. The munis stay out of this, especially this one. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Back to 6. Do you want to read that one out and then we'll look for a motion?
Okay, number 6 is that development variance permit number DVP 23D01, brackets 4598 Sparwood Road, PID 029-043-107 be denied.
Director Abbott. Sorry, just turn your microphone on.
So move.
Okay, that's been moved. Seconded by Director Nicholson. And speakers to the motion. Usually give the mover or seconder first shot, so Director Abbott and then Director Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. This has obviously garnered quite a bit of interest today, last week, and with due respect to the applicants, it is a life asset that they wish to enjoy through the balance of their time on the property. there has been a lot of discussion. One of the applicant's prime stances is that at my request, I wanted this to go back to the APC for community input. And the community wrote quite extensively letters in opposition, and these were delivered to the APC members, and I gather delivered to the applicant, and the applicants were allowed to speak publicly at the APC and effectively refute every one of the objections, which is their prerogative. One of the fallacies, in my opinion, of the APC is that people in the audience were not allowed to comment. Only the members of the APC and the applicant. And I take a little bit of issue. I was in the room and I was offered an opportunity to speak. I take a little bit of an issue with the totality of acceptance and the unanimity of the support by the APC. An APC that's chaired by the applicant's agent, who did recuse himself after speaking and organizing the structure of the committee. But quite a bit of angst from the community was not able to be shared, but the applicants were able to refute that angst. So again, I take a bit of an issue with unanimity, and it was a very new APC. Some of the members, well, quite a few of the APC members were not present, and those that were quite new. And you heard from one of my former colleague of mine on the APC, Mr. Meyer, a neighbor. He and I were on the OCP and on the APC for many, many years. So we do kind of have a feeling about what the community stands for. And I stand behind my attestation last week that the community does not want this application. And accordingly, that is why I'm voting for these variances be deferred. I would, Chair, have an opportunity, I would like to have an opportunity for a supplemental motion after this is voted upon.
Thank you. I'll go to Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, probably be answered by one of the planning committee, and this goes to, do the applicants have the option of taking this to the Board of Variance? And I'm looking, I think that has been answered before, but I'm looking for clarification here. And if they do take it to the Board of Variance, is any decision that's made by that board binding?
Through staff, Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question, as I understand it through you, was whether the Board of Variance, if they did make an application to the Board of Variance, if any decision made by them in respect to the application would be binding. Yes, it would be. If they determined there was a hardship and decided that an application such as this was approvable, that would be it. There isn't an appeal to that particular process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tippett. And could I have a follow-up, please?
Yep.
So they do have the option of taking it to the Board of Variance?
Well, it's technically possible. I guess the Board of Variance is somewhat constrained, unlike this board, in the context of variances by being required to determine that there would be a hardship in the event that the variance was not approved. That's a fairly high test or bar to clear. It's not to say this board can't use the same kind of thinking, but you're not constrained in that way. Sure. So that's the only comment I would have on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
sorry, Mr. Robbins just wants to provide a quick point of clarity.
I just wanted to, the motion was to deny, and Director Wilson said deferred, and I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that the motion was to deny.
No, yeah, no, you said defer.
No.
Director Wilson, you said defer.
Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's denied.
I just wanted to make sure that it's clear
All
at the
right,
table
yeah, sorry, my mistake.
what you potentially will be voting on.
Supplemental, Director Wilson.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to apologize to the director of the area here because I'm having a real hard time with this one. Because the APC has approved it, the staff are reckoning on going forward with it and all the rest of it. And one of the comments that came up was about planning into the future. And I bought our place 23 years ago. I couldn't have foreseen 23 years ago what I was going to be doing. So I'm a little bit concerned about that particular comment. In this particular case, I am in favor of approving this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thanks. This is really challenging at committee, and it was it's challenging today, and it's it's about process, it's about our procedures, everything from our, our marching orders to our APCs. It's the part about acknowledging the director for the area's feedback and input, and it's acknowledging our professional staff and the input that they provide us. And it's our responsibility to come here with an open mind, listen to the totality of the information that's put before us. And, I'm going to quote one of the staff that was up at the lectern during electoral area services, who stated that the variances being asked for were not addressed by the input that we received from the public at the beginning of the meeting. There was issues around water and traffic, and perhaps, I don't even think there were sight lines mentioned. So I'm going to go back to where I started, in that for us to be doing good governance, we take the input that's been provided to us, and we had applicable input contained in the report from the Advisory Planning Commission. And we don't generally see unanimous recommendations, not decisions, recommendations from APCs, but it was noted in this case. We had a full support from staff in the reports that they meet zoning, they meet the intent of the OCP, the lot sizes, everything fits, except for the variances. And so, I'm looking at the totality of the information and the facts that have been provided to us, and the preponderance of that is in favor of supporting this variance. The detraction to that is the community input from neighbors who were very passionate in what they provided us in the way of comment, but they weren't really comments germane to the details of the application. So as electoral area directors, we generally tend to support the feedback and the desires of the director for the area. But in this case, in my view, there's an overwhelming weight that goes with the professional advice and the advice that we've had from the APC. So I can't support the recommendation to deny.
Thank you. Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. Someone maybe, no, okay. I'm echoing.
You got a hot mic over there.
Yeah. And so I'm very large on process, as you know, and I would agree with Director Morrison that it's essential to look at process. I would ask staff that if there's, because I have the feeling from Director Abbott that there was a process concern. And if there's a process concern, I would want to have that addressed prior to making a decision. And so is staff able to advise us on how you correct something that you feel, that the director feels may be done not correctly? So I'm not sure of the right wording on that, but so this is around the APC's decision. He's made concern that it may not have been done in the correct process.
I think staff are going to confer on that for a moment. Should have taken that break. Ms. Pressman.
Through the chair to Director Martman, I believe you're asking about public involvement in the Advisory Planning Commission meeting, which we recommend against. The APC was provided all of the written communication that was provided to the EASC. So they received all that information that was provided to the EASC and also had the ability to watch the video of the EASC meetings.
Yeah. I'm just going to just step in as a fellow colleague. I'm not an electoral area director, so I know I have no piece here. But, public participation in a community planning advisory committee meeting or a parks meeting is completely untenable. You mob a bunch of volunteers and a volunteer chair, and you influence and intimidate, and that can influence the decision-making of a board like an APC. That would be completely inappropriate. It's been spelled out many times in many different venues of why you don't put people in those positions. The second part of this, for me, and not judging the issue at hand, but is judging an issue based on a completely unrelated matter and using a discretionary decision to decide a matter or another concern that you have. To me, that is fundamentally inappropriate, and I watched that meeting with much dismay, hearing that the discussion was not related to the veracity or validity of the actual variances being requested, but to other issues related to the broader issue of that property. And I'll leave it there. Director Merman.
Thank you. And I think for me to make a decision is really establishing that process was done in a manner that was acceptable. So if, I think that's one of my decision points. I think the other point, and this is just a general comment, is that we do get put in situations where we're only looking at a very small piece of a very large issue. And we end up making a decision on a very small piece where, sometimes if you step back and look at the whole thing, you go like, what just happened here? And I know that's part of our role. And I guess what I'm trying to voice is that I sense a frustration, at least from my residents, around our processes with APCs, our processes with public information sessions, that it sometimes isn't either understood well by my residents, but it's just one of those things that it's, I struggle with these kind of decisions because of that very thing, is that we have processes that we are required to follow, but the decisions have big ramifications. So I'll just leave it at that. But I struggle with this, but I would again fall with like Director Morrison and others that we need to stick on the process.
Thank you, Director Acton.
So I don't think it's a good idea for us to be focusing on the APC. We're the elected official. The APC is there to advise us. We can take that advice or not. It has no weight. The process has been followed. If there's a variance request that leads to poor development decisions further on, I think we don't have to grant a variance. So I'm going to support the original resolution, and I hope that we will, anyway, I think a variance, whether it's focused on that one specific detail or not, if we only look at that little detail, we can't make a good decision. Otherwise, why even have a variance come forward to us?
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. We have these variances to make our communities livable. I don't know whether the variances are good or bad in this particular case, but we have them there for a reason. And I am not sure that the reason, I am just not convinced that changing the variances so we can subdivide and plunk in more density in that particular lot will be well served, given that the livability aspect of the variances will be completely ignored. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion that's on the floor? And this is for electoral area directors only. I'm going to call the question. This is for that the variance be denied. All those in favor? And opposed? Directors Morrison, Wilson, Segal, Martman. Anybody on my screen? Opposed, and we have all 9 electoral area directors here. The motion carries 5-4. I'm going to go to Director Abbott. He said he wanted to propose a supplemental motion, and then we're going to take a recess.
I'd like to refer to staff, or defer to staff, or ask staff to work with the applicants to see if a simple one-lot subdivision might be amenable of interest to the applicants.
Just through to staff, is that in order? We just denied the variance. Wouldn't it have been more appropriately to refer the variance request back to staff? I don't know when you just denied an application if you can, yeah, they'd have to reapply in a number of months, yeah. Unfortunately, with the denial that was just passed, they'd have to reapply. So it's not possible to refer something back to staff that's just been denied.
So that's out of order.
Yeah.
Point of order, could we have a count on that vote?
So I'll just ask for those opposed to the last vote again. I only found 4, and I looked on my screen for a 5th, and there wasn't. So it was Martman, Morrison, Wilson, Segal, and unless somebody at home I missed on my blurry screen or with my bad eyes, no, Jesse did not vote against, so the motion carried. So again, I heard somebody say it out, the only way, if you want to refer that back to staff for further consideration, you want a motion to reconsider, it's a 2/3 vote. Yeah.
So in answer, I'm not interested in referring it back to, or reconsidering this motion.
You're not?
I am not.
Okay, so that is that. We will take a,
And Chair,
yeah, unless someone on the affirmative side of the vote wishes to reconsider, then I let it hang out there, I don't see anyone. So no follow-up motions are suitable. Director Abbott?
you're trying to go for a recess, and I wondered if we could just briefly touch on the 7th item that I pulled, because it's...
Oh, right, sorry, my apology. Go ahead, Director, Director Wilson, you moving number 7?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that staff here, do you want me to read it? That staff review the Cowichan Bay Sewer Servicing Policy 2015 and report back to the Electoral Area Service Committee on the allocation and availability of sewage units in Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay.
Okay, Director Abbott.
If I can second it and comment on it, that came out of the ASC, obviously, but if I could, I'd like to clarify that it should be Cowichan Bay and Lambourne. It should include the Lambourne Estate sewage system in addition to Cowichan Bay. They're 2 different systems.
So you're making that amendment?
Yes.
So that was moved by Director Wilson, originally seconded by Director Abbott. Now you're proposing an amendment that includes Lambourne Estates water and sewer systems?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you. Amendment's on the floor. Electoral area directors only. Do we have speakers to the amendment? Director Martman.
I'm not sure what the ramifications of adding Lambourne to this is. Could staff speak to it?
I think we have utility staff here. Anyone on staff that can speak to the implications of adding Lambourne Estates to the number 7, the review of the Cowichan Bay Area D utilities. Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give it a try. I don't represent utilities, but I know a little bit about it. I think the policy is about how units are allocated if they're available, in the unused pool of connections. And I don't think there would be any harm in including Lambourne in it, because I think the same issue that occurs in the Cowichan Bay sewer area also would occur on a smaller scale in Lambourne. So I think it's probably a fairly innocuous thing to add.
Okay,
probably a good thing.
And you'll hear from utilities if not. Okay, on the amendment, any further speakers? Can I call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So now we're talking about Cowichan Bay and Lambourne water sewer allocations I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll take a 10. All right, we're back. I'm going to tighten up, as the Black Keys would say. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're on to staff reports. SR1 is a report from the General Manager, Community Services Department with regards to regional recreation governance, new Recreation Commission establishment bylaws. Mr. Elzinga is at the podium right now.
That item is there for information. Mr. Elzinga, did you want to, just there for questions? To the board? Director Martman. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and interesting read. And I just had a question as the chair of the governance committee. One of the things is the responsibilities of electoral area directors. So I'm wondering if you can comment what we just did to the responsibilities of electoral area directors with the governance under the different commissions or the different recreation facilities now.
I'm not clear either.
He's not
Mr.
clear yet.
Elzinga.
Okay, so there's a certain workload that directors do. Did we just add to it?
Mr. Elzinga.
Mr. Chair, through to Director Martman. So the CVRD currently has 4 recreation commissions. We are proposing 4 new commissions, so there will be a potential redistribution of workload, but roughly the same amount.
Follow-up?
So I guess the follow-up, who was doing the work before and who's going to do the work now?
Mr. Elzinga.
Mr. Chair, that might be a longer answer. So there's 3 elected officials in the Couch and Lake area that would continue on the Couch and Lake Recreation Commission. There's, I think all directors in the South End would still be participating in the Couch and South Recreation Commission. The real increased workload is potentially on the municipality of North Cowichan. So there would be 7 representatives required across the 4 different commissions. Of course, North Cowichan will have the opportunity to appoint some community members to those commissions if they so choose.
Thank you. Alternate Director Finlay.
Thank you for that. I'm curious, just the 6% threshold, where does that actually come from? Because it seems kind of, from my perspective. Sorry, I just haven't been here.
Can I rule that out of order?
Watch the video. Yeah, fair enough.
Go ahead, Director Elzinga. Yeah, we're all like, I think the chair just ruled that out of order. Asked and answered months ago.
Yeah, but maybe a quick one for Director Finlay is that obviously the higher the threshold, the less participation on each of the commissions. If it had gone to 7%, electoral area G would not be participating on any commission. So that was the highest threshold where each electoral area and municipality would be represented on one commission.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion on that item? Those bylaws are later in the agenda. Thank you. Seeing none, let's move on. Mr. Robbins.
SR2 is a report from Emergency Management Cowichan with regards to replacement of radio service vehicle. There's a 2-part recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director McGonigal. Discussion? Director Wilson.
Very quick comment here, not a discussion at all, but I had because we're in a drought situation and there is a serious fire risk at the moment, I did have a question from one of my residents asking about the rooftop fire sprinklers that are available. They're no longer available through the CVRD. Most of them are available through the local fire departments. So basically, that's just part of the emergency management as well to get these in, if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Radios and sprinklers. There's a connection there. Should have ruled that out of order. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you. SR3 is a verbal report from the Emergency Management Division with regards to an update on regional drought conditions.
Not specific water systems. Mr. Postings.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see everyone today. So today the intent was to provide the board with a general update of the existing drought conditions within the region. This was an opportunity for us to bring it. There's been a lot of messaging, both through various organizations such as the municipalities as well as the regional district, as well as the province. And so we wanted to bring this, the latest update to the board here just to continue that messaging and ensure that the community is aware of the activities and the importance of some of the steps that are needed to be taken place. So I just have a very quick introduction, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lawrence as well as Ms. Diver, who will talk specifically about drought response and also about the emergency management REOC that has been activated in response to the drought. So I'll pass that on to them in a moment. So as everyone is aware, our region is in a drought level 5, which is the highest level. And this impacts, obviously, or does it affect people in different ways, resulting in impacts to agricultural, health, economic, and environmental consequences. So certainly a challenging time. The CVRD currently, in many of our water systems, is at a stage 3 water restrictions, and we do have a number of systems that are in stage 4. So, and this is not unusual for us in the last couple of years, but it is something that with the drought levels is really important for us to monitor and respond to accordingly. Today we were hoping again just to provide a general update of where things are, and certainly can answer questions relating to that. But we most importantly wanted just to continue to have that messaging going out to the community. And so our regional partners we've been working on, from newspaper ads to social media, as well as there's a number of frequently asked question sheets that have been distributed. So our communications representatives from all the organizations that we have, as well as the CVRD here, have been working together to make sure this message is being distributed to the community, because there is still questions, and a lot of those questions, we want to make sure that we're trying to answer those. As well, I think I mentioned earlier that the province has, and you probably all are aware, in the last couple of weeks, they have been providing regular updates and really encouraging people to conserve and reduce their water. So we're doing our part here as much as we can. So what I will do at this point in time, and I will end here just in case it doesn't come back to me, is that if there are questions or there's concerns, we do, for CVRD representatives, the best way to contact us is obviously through our website. There is an email address, utilities@cvrd.bc.ca, or our phone line to our utilities, which is 250-747, is it 747 or 746? 6, thank you. 746, I saw that one. I saw it's not a 7. 746-2530, and again, there's a lot of information on the site. So what I'll do right now, we're certainly happy to answer questions as we go, but I'm going to pass over to Mr. Lawrence just to talk about, from the environmental perspective, the response to drought and some of the steps that we can take. So I'll pass.
Mr. Lawrence, and I recognize and welcome Ms. Diver online as well. Go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Postings. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, Mr. Chair, I do have a handout to provide to directors, which will cover some of the items that we'll be speaking about here. Yeah, thank you. Great, thanks. Thank you. And so a little bit more to add to what Mr. Postings has already shared with you in terms of the drought level 5. In terms of how we arrived at this state, it's essentially the rating that the province has assessed based on a number of parameters, including the stream flows, so the low stream flows that we have across the region. as well as the precipitation record. So for example, the rain that we received on Monday was the first rain that we'd received of any significant amount for 40 days prior to that. And so we're also anticipating more dry conditions to come here. So a little bit more on that as well, and that's covered in the handout there is what we can expect going forward into the future. And so out to 2050, we can expect a 17% decrease in summertime precipitation, as well as a 3.2 degree increase in summertime temperatures. And so when we think about these sets of conditions, the way that droughts from the prior years that we've experienced can exacerbate the conditions that we're seeing this year. When we think about the impacts to streamside vegetation and some of our forests, and so, we can also think about some of the impacts of heat on the drought from the standpoint of this increased rate of evaporation. And so both the rainfall and the temperature combine to give us this state that we're in today. And so what this handout provides is some information that we're sharing not only with you, but it's also intended for the public. And so there's information there on the impacts, including the human health hazards, a little bit more about the drought rating from the province, and some tools that we have for managing those risks. And so, for example, the various water conservation measures that folks can look to conserve water, including following the water restrictions, information about lawn care and household appliances. And similarly, some information for the agricultural community, as well as some tips for managing and reducing risk to wildfire, as well as the extreme heat that we have experienced in recent years as well. And so with that, passing it now over to Ms. Thompson, if I may, for a bit of an update as well from the sorry, Miss Diver first, and then we'll go to Miss Thompson. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Over to you, Miss Diver.
Thank you. So coming from the Regional Emergency Operations Center, so we've been activated for about a week. The function of the Regional Emergency Operations Center is really to support the response side of things through coordination. So there's been substantial communications done throughout the Cowichan area, and that communication has been in collaboration with municipal information officers as well. So lots of work with our communications team here at CVRD, working with the different municipalities on the messaging and aligning sort of those operational pieces. We're also working with the province to make sure that any of those incremental response costs that are far beyond our budget capacities, where possible, are getting reimbursed. So that's where we look at some of the extra costs that have exceeded our capacity, have been unexpected, and looking at sort of that provincial support for it. Key operations staff have also been engaging their own counterparts in the municipalities and First Nations to make sure that the measures they're taking align with what's being communicated. And then obviously we're also monitoring systems at risk through weekly updates. I will turn it over to Ms. Thompson if she'd like to come up, or Mr. Postings.
Mr. Postings is at the lectern.
Yeah, great, thank you. So the last part is I just wanted to share, obviously we have two of our utility staff here, Mr. Etherington and Ms. Thompson. And if there is any questions related, first I want to commend these two for specifically for the CVRD systems. There's been a lot of efforts the last couple of weeks here and going on prior to that, preparing, and the energy and effort that they've been putting in on a daily basis, weekends, evenings. And I think many of you have been getting updates about, specific systems, and we didn't really come here today to talk about those, but you'll continue to get those updates, and there's a lot of hard work in the background. I want to, thank them for their efforts to date, as no different than our emergency management and our environment. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Morrison first, and then Martman.
Thanks, and thanks for the handout. And this is probably for our emergency management folks. I'd just like a little clarification. The one box on the back is the one that scares me the most, and that's the managed wildfire risk. And, you know, I think about in Nova Scotia where they were having wildfires not that long ago. What was it? The premier got on TV and said, "Don't burn, stupid," or something like that, which I think might apply here, but now they're having floods. But my question is around what is permissible. Now, we all know campfires are total ban, but there's questions that are happening in my community because we have people from other communities coming to camp and the likes. Cooking devices, charcoal barbecues, propane barbecues, and even propane fire rings. You know, I was at an event a number of years ago where it was very, very dry, and the fire department came along with the tape measure and measured the height of the propane flame in our decorative ring. Can we get some clarity from staff as to what exactly is banned completely, permitted, with what regulations, so that we can be a resource for people in the community should we be asked?
So through the chair to the director, all of that information is available through BC Wildfire Service. There are a lot of specific stipulations, like what type of propane barbecue is allowed. So I won't take up the board's time with all of those stipulations, but they are described very well on BC Wildfire Services website, right on the very front page. And so that's where I would direct your public, because that's going to be the most up-to-date messaging.
Thank you. Director Martman.
Thank you, and a question to utilities. I've had recently some residents have contacted me with alarms that they had to go to stage 3 restrictions when they didn't have a utility, they had a well. So I'm wondering if our signage is catching some attention that it shouldn't be, and if that's something you've heard about before. This is coming from down at if you drive past Shellwood, and they go down past there, and they're going like, "Oh, I saw a sign at Shellwood saying water restrictions."
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Mr. Etherington?
So through the chair to Director Mervin, the signage is on either side of the system. So as you enter and then leave. So we have no jurisdiction over private wells. The province is the only person that can, or the only governance that can do anything about that. So no.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
think,
run across it before.
yeah.
We've had people complain.
Okay.
And with agriculture, but we have no say.
Follow-up. Another question that comes up is around well registries, and with water drought conditions and people getting concerned about their own personal wells. Any insights around well registration for domestic purposes? And should people be considering that now?
Vanessa, what do you think? Vanessa's more.
Or should we be asking for a workshop from the ministry?
Yeah, so there's, through the chair, well registry and well licensing. So we talk a lot about well licensing for the systems, which we're required to do, but you can register your well. There's no cost to that. And it's free, and it's recommended that you do register your well, because then it's included in the provincial database. So when the province is assessing license applications and those kinds of things, they can take into consideration existing well use in the area.
And further to what Vanessa just said, registering your own personal well is definitely a good idea, because if it's not registered, something goes in beside you, there's a pump test, you have drawdown effects. There's no real, leg to stand on.
Date of precedence.
Yeah.
Does the CVRD do any kind of communication on this, or is that strictly a ministry approach? I'm just thinking about drought and water conservation and what could be done.
You get all three of us.
I can add, if I may, that when the regulation first came out for the registration and licensing of groundwater, we did have a workshop that was hosted by the province and co-hosted by the CVRD as well. And so the idea was to provide awareness to folks about the new regulation, but it is, the province does have their materials for providing further information. They have brochures and a web page that folks can go to for more details, so.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Director Nicholson.
I'm wondering on the second page of this, under exceptionally dry conditions, level 5, the response is possible emergency response. What would emergency response look like?
Is that Ms. Diver? I saw your camera
Yeah.
flip on, so that made me think you were going to take it.
Totally fine. So through the chair to Director Allison. Nicholson, the response can vary. It really depends what's actually impacting us. So I think what they mean by that are the various impacts of drought that could occur, wildfire being one of them, flash flooding actually being another. So we suddenly get rain, we get that impact. If we experience water shortages where we no longer have access to hauling services because everyone is using the same service, that's another potential emergency response action that could invoke the Emergency Act and the declaration of a state of local emergency, where we would have additional powers to put enforcement in place.
Thank you. Follow up, Director Nicholson.
So we're in a drought, and we've, last term, I believe we moved that we had a climate emergency happening. And I actually don't think this situation is probably going to be the way of the future, and it's certainly devastating right now. And you perhaps, I mean, I talk about the Cook Sila watershed all the time, for good reason. And the Cook Sila watershed is probably sort of the canary in the coal mine for most of the watersheds on eastern Vancouver Island. It's running very low in water, and last week, the province staff went around, the compliance people went around to farmers who have not applied for a license for their wells. So they've had about 6 years, they've been promoting farmers or everyone who is using water for a commercial purpose to apply for a license, a groundwater license. Surface water licenses in the Cook Sila have not been given out since the early 80s because they were overcommitted. So everyone put in wells, and so now they are required to license the well use for commercial purposes. Many people decided that they did not like to have the government overreach, as they would tell me. And so I guess that they did not apply for a license. And now the time limit ran out last spring. And so because we're in such a serious drought right now, particularly in the Cook Sila, the province is sending officers around to tell people to shut off their water. And it has happened to a number of fairly important farms in the Cook Sila watershed community. And this is a really serious thing. And we can expect that this will become more common throughout the region. So I actually appreciate this kind of communication, but I think it's way too little and way too late, because we need to be very, very proactive. We need to change the culture. This is not about how the CVRD water systems are being affected, because in electoral areas, most of us are on wells. And the thing that I think people really fail to understand is that surface water and groundwater are intimately connected, and the province can, for reasons of fish and ecosystems and surface water, as soon as low flows get low enough, they can shut people down. Now, they don't shut domestic use down, but every drop counts. So I think our messaging needs to change to be much more holistic and centered on everyone doing their part to conserve water. We'd all be in a better, and to adapt and prepare with, and think about how we can use our regulations to require, rainwater capture and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I just think we should have a real advertising campaign. if you think about emergencies, you know, it really is about communicating and then communicating the importance and emergency situation of it for everyone, not just those people who are unfortunately having the most problem with their wells. I don't know if I made any sense. I am just really worried.
Any thoughts on staff's part? So I think earlier, more direct communication more broadly.
Yeah, I had an idea we should have one of the, and I hate billboards. There should be a billboard up about this that you drive by that reminds people that we're all responsible.
Thank you. Director Martman.
Just to follow up on that, we do have billboards already, and our billboards exist at every fire department. And they do list out, you know, sort of the conditions for fire hazard. And I'm wondering if Director Nicholson is onto something about, can you put another billboard with that one to say, this is where we are with drought? And this is, you know, step 3 or step 4. Okay, or whatever little icon you want to put on there, so that someone would understand that, you know, it's important for all of us to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would reflect on that, like at our welcome signs in the municipalities, we have billboards with the drought level on it. I just had somebody say, what does that mean to me? Nothing. So I think what Director Nicholson's saying is something that's really eye-catching and really gets your attention, that says, this is a serious issue, take it seriously, and it takes all of us to manage this crisis together. Because unfortunately, I see it everywhere. I don't know how many times I drive by and I see sprinklers on in green grass, and it's abhorrent, right? Or you see a new house developed and it's like, you could have zero-escaped that thing, saved yourself the trouble, and not looked like the... Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, conversations, one thing leads to another. This is one of the things that come to mind. When Director Nicholson was talking, we have a dwindling water supply, no two ways about it. And as Director Nicholson says, the surface water and groundwaters are very, very closely linked, and yet we are thinking small scale. We're thinking about the CVRD. We're not working with Nanaimo, we're not working with anybody else, we're not working with the CVRD, and yet we're still talking about perhaps in the future raising the weir to store more water. And this to me is the crux of the matter. We need to start thinking of storing water when there is plenty of it, and we're not. We're not thinking about raising where we are. We're talking about raising the weir. When's it going to happen? I don't know. Are we talking about investing in reservoirs? Are we talking about investing in places where we can actually store water when there's plenty there, instead of letting it all run away into the ocean, which is exactly what happens when we've got plenty. And then all of a sudden we've got none. I'd like to see this conversation taken further. I don't know who with, UBCM, the province, the feds, or wherever, and say, what can we do to start conserving when we have plenty? Just thoughts anyway.
Thank you. Knowing that we've got a $20 million project for more water storage in Ladysmith, it's definitely not expensive, or not inexpensive, and definitely needed. But I will say to Director Wilson, that narrative is catching fire, but hopefully not. But more broadly, you know, we're on the weekly calls with the province, with Minister Ma and the agricultural ministries and municipal affairs. It's a very live issue. I'm not sure we won't be talking about it at UBCM this year. I have a feeling, sadly, as Director Nicholson sort of alluded to, that we're late July now. Come mid-September, I'm really fearful of where we'll be, and I think that will be the most present conversation at UBCM this year for sure.
And Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind a very quick follow-up comment here. I've always been a what-if person, because my whole life has been spent on planning for what-if scenarios. So if the what-if scenario happened, we were ready for it. In this particular case, what if the CERD had not gone ahead and built the Souk Reservoir? What if? Think about that one. done, finished. So I would like to really put some effort into talking about storage and conservation of plentiful times. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know our staff could hear that. Director Abbott.
Some mention has been made of signage and the confusion over signage, but Mr. Etherington last week stepped up and said our water table is 4 meters below where it was, I believe it was 4 meters below where it was a year ago. And I'm thinking a pictographic where we can have things like billboards that show where the water table was, something that resonates with people, that they understand, like your neighbor's chair. What does 3, 4, 5 stage this translates to something of a level? It means nothing. So we got to address communication.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to say anything. Director Posting, or Mr. Postings, do you want to say something to that? Like, hey, I can see the colors, they go from green to red, it slides all the way over there, drought level, to me that says something's not good. But if we want to do this, I guess we can, but there is a better way to communicate. And it can be engaging, maybe even fun sometimes, or alarming, by stressing the message a little bit more in layman's terms, if drought level 5 big red square doesn't hit people the right way.
And certainly this is great feedback, and this is another one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation today. So we will certainly take this away. And some of this is in the works. Like I mentioned earlier, the communications teams from each of the municipalities and the CVRD are looking at, there's a number of things that are going out right now, and we'll be able to add to that and build on that in the coming days here and get ahead of this as much as we can. So.
Okay. Anything else from staff? Any more questions from directors? Seeing none. Thank you for that. Thank you to all our emergency management, utilities, and environmental folks who contribute to this work. And we'll move on, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The addition of SR4, which was a report from committee this morning, a report from the Office of the Chair and CAO, a recommendation that it be recommended to the board that Director Morrison and Director Wilson be permitted to attend the 17th Annual State of the Island Economic Summit in Nanaimo, October 25th and 26th, 2023.
Moved by Director, you have a question? Sorry, Director Martman.
This might be the excellent opportunity to use is it the 99 or the NCX?
The 70, I wanted to be the Paul Coffey 77. But.
The 77, just mentioning it.
Yeah, that's true. It is a good drop-off logo, right by there. All right, anyone want to move the motion? Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Toporowski. Any discussion? Director Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now, I would encourage anybody to, if they have a chance, to go to this particular conference, because it's not just about finance. This is the whole island that and the businesses that who work and employ people here. If you get a chance, by all means go. It's probably one of the best around. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I don't think I'll be able to go, but I'm looking forward to your report, Mike.
Any further discussion? Pew, pew. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving to bylaws section, there are no items under public hearings. The first item is B1, the CVRD bylaw number 4510, Couch and South Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4510, Couch and South Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be adopted.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Douglas. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
B2, that CVRD bylaw number 4511, Cowichan North Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4511, Cowichan North Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be adopted.
Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Martman. Sorry, I'm just, every time he reads the second part out, I'm trying to get him to skip the descriptor. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
B3 is that CVRD bylaw number 4512, Cowichan Core Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be granted for second and third readings.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And that the same bylaw be adopted.
I wasn't going to go that short, but I like it. Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And that and then B4, that other bylaw, no.
That other bylaw, B4, be adopted.
That CVRD bylaw number 4513, Cowichan Lake Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Deck. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Director McGonigal opposed? Motion carries.
And that bylaw number 4513 be adopted.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? Director McGonigal opposed. The motion carries.
And moving to section 14, these are bylaws for electoral area director votes only. BEA1, that's CVRD bylaw number 4424, development permit area amendment bylaw 2023 be granted first reading.
Did you want a question or? Okay, it's not on the floor. I'll take a motion first. Director Morrison, seconded by Director Nicholson. Director Martman.
Thank you, and thank you through to staff for this, and I did mention this to staff, so I just wanted to share this with the board, that I did question on page 8, number RF, which talks about excluding confined barns or shelters for livestock, and staff has said that they would come back with rewording of that in the second reading. So just something, I don't know how you confine a barn, but I think they're talking about animals in the barn, but just, another farmer thing. So, and I did point out, I'm not sure where on this, there's nothing under Schedule E, changes to maps. So I'm just wondering if there's something missing or if that's meant to be blank. That's on page 13.
Through to staff. Director Abbott, you want to answer the question for staff?
Oh, sorry, no.
Okay, thank you. I don't think Mr. Tippett, we can start calling you Jack of all trades.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't answer this one, Mr. Chair. It was the Strategic Initiatives Group that did the bylaw, but I certainly expect it would have the map schedules associated with it at second reading. Maybe, it looks like Michelle may have some further information.
Ms. Pressman.
I recall, I didn't just pull it up right now, but when this was on the EASC agenda, I believe that the map schedules were hyperlinked due to the size of the files.
Can anyone hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is Allison Garnett. I'm one of the Planning Strategic Initiatives. Hi. So yes, if I may answer that question, Ms.
Please
Pressman
do.
is absolutely right. The Schedule E is a replacement of the agricultural lands map, which is a schedule of the official community plan. So it's it's a huge map schedule, and I'm not sure if it was not visible in your package. Yeah, so it is, it's a replacement of Schedule D agricultural lands maps.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Director Martman? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Director Abbott. Looks like we needed an information item on this.
This is a big item. Top of page 9, the surface of the trial. I think Ms. Garnett wants to say the surface of the trail. So there's a typo in trial versus trail.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So if we're moving first reading of this bylaw, should that first reading include both the inclusion of Schedule E, which the directors are saying we can't see, and the correction to the trail. I don't know, Mr. Robbins, if it's appropriate to say that it be moved and seconded, supported for first reading with those amendments, or what the right process would be.
You can certainly give it first reading, and subsequent readings will have those, the hyperlinks connected and corrected, and the typo will chalk it up to an administrative error.
Okay, thank you. Although the surface of a trial sounds interesting as well. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
BEA2, that CVRD bylaw number 4484, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 2023 be granted first reading.
Electoral Area Directors only, moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
BEA3, that CVRD bylaw number 4485, zoning bylaw for the electoral areas, that's development permit exemptions and guidelines 2023 be granted first reading.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
BEA4, the first part, that CVRD bylaw number 4496, electoral area G, Saltaire Gulf Island zoning amendment bylaw, that's for 11224 Chemainus Road, PID 003067327 2023 be granted third reading.
I'll move that. Just a quick comment.
Oh, get a seconder, Director McClinton? Don't yell at me, I saw your hand. Seconded by Director Segal. Back to you, Director McClinton.
Just a quick note that the map in the attachment's wrong. I'm just not sure if that impacts anything. It's from Area A, but yeah, I think we get the gist of the motion.
It's been corrected since the agenda was published, but thank you for the note.
Great.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I know, he just turns on his microphone and starts yelling at the chair.
And that
Mr.
CVRD bylaw
Robbins.
number 4496 be adopted.
Moved by Director McClinton, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
BEA5, that CVRD bylaw number 4497, electoral area F, Cowichan Lake, South Scotts Falls zoning amendment bylaw 7531, Cowichan Lake Road, PID 012490920, 2023 be granted first and second readings.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Martman, I thought. Yep, and called the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
BEA6, that CVRD bylaw number 4508, South Cowichan zoning amendment bylaw 1146, Fisher Road 2023 be granted first and second readings.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Director Wilson was opposed?
Sorry?
No, I wasn't opposed. I was hoping to get in before you went. It's
Oh,
just a
my
very quick
apologies.
comment. No, that's okay. Thank you very much to the directors for voting in favour of the option that I broke forward. This is a great example of meeting a need in good time. Thank you very much for your support on that one.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we're going to move to new business, and those were 4 items. The grant and aid request for electoral, 2 for electoral A, 1 in electoral area B, and 1 electoral E. I'm not sure if there's an interest in just an omnibus motion.
Moved by Director Segal. I know one director has an interest. Seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion on any of those 4 items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
That moves us to question period. There's no one online, and I don't see anyone in the boardroom, which moves us to a closed session motion. And bear with me for one moment.
Under all the sections, you want me to get those for you?
We have it as 2 items from Committee of the Whole have been moved over, so I'm adding those as CSSR 3 and CSSR 4. I was also made aware of a recommendation that didn't get to the July 12th board as well, that needs to be included. And so then I would ask that their motion to close under Section 90 of the Community Charter.
E, F, G, and K.
E, F, G, E, and K, correct. Thank you.
I'm all over. I'm here for you, buddy. Moved by Director Segal, second by Director Istash. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
But you could have been stumped if the other two items
We
weren't
are
those.
closed. No, I had both agendas here. E,